Hello and welcome to 32 Teams in 32 Days, your daily NFL offseason deep dive. I'm Ben Jackson, and every episode we break down one team's path through free agency, the draft, and key roster moves heading into 2025. Today we're focusing on the team holding the number 2 pick, the Cleveland Browns. After a rough season, they're staring at a critical offseason that could determine whether they bounce back or stay stuck in a rebuild. Let's break it all down. What needs to change, where they should spend in free agency, and how they should attack the draft. Let's get after it. All right, coming into 2024, the Cleveland Browns win projection over or under was 8.5 wins. Kind of modest, but with Deshaun Watson and some hope that they could bounce back from a tough 2023. There was reason for hope, but unfortunately, you know that they bottomed out with a 3-14 record. Looking at the reasons why, in terms of EPA per play, their pass offense was 32nd, and it just looked like Watson was never a good fit in this offense. Really, he went on to tear his Achilles on October 20th and re-tore it later on in the season. So 2 ACL tears within a span of 4 months. Really looks like his 2025 season is seriously in doubt, and I think that the organization is ready to move on. Unfortunately, he was just never a fit in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And they brought in Ken Dorsey in 2024 to be the offensive coordinator, try to create a scheme that would be a little bit more spread out, a little bit more in-gun option routes, different things to try to accommodate Watson. That's enough words about that offense. It was a rough one to watch, unfortunately. The rush offense was 23rd in EPA per play as Nick Chubb tried to come back from injury and get that the run game back to what it used to be, but they just weren't able to quite do that. The offensive line's been getting old as well. On defense, the pass defense was 20th. They've got some good corners who have played well for them in the past. Unfortunately, everyone except Denzel Ward kind of took a step back this year, so that was the primary cause for their struggles. The rush defense still held pretty strong at 10th. Their front four especially played well, and their linebackers played well as well. So, on offense, after the season, Ken Dorsey's gone now, and their new offensive coordinator will be tight end coach Tommy Rees, and the play caller will be back to 2-time Coach of the Year Kevin Stefanski. I think he's shown that his offense can be successful. He just needs people to buy in and needs pieces that fit for it. So I don't think that'll be Watson, but we'll see. Talk about what that may look like going forward. Normally, I would get into the roster strengths and weaknesses at this point, but I think we need to talk about the fact that we're $30 million over the cap, and so we're probably going to have to open up a couple holes on the roster to remedy that. So $38 million in effective cap space. Once they sign their draft picks, they really need to clear like almost $40 million before they start thinking about re-signing anyone or signing a free agent. So here's what that's going to look like, and I'm going to try to make this palatable, not get into too many details here. So because of the way that they've structured their contracts, they're going to have to use restructures and post June 1st cuts. I think everyone knows that Watson's contract is fully guaranteed, but even beyond that, a lot of their contracts are kind of set in stone where they don't have too much wiggle room to do things. They have to push money into the future. They can't just cut 2 guys and get significant cap space. So I think it's probably a no-brainer that they restructure Watson just because his cap number is like $73 million, and that's the biggest chunk to kind of push into the future, probably pushing 50 to 60% of that off into future seasons. You're going to have to pay it anyway. Yeah, it's going to stink to have to pay it later, but it's going to stink anytime you do it. So then outside of him, I also think Denzel Ward is a no-brainer restructure. He's 28. He's made 4 Pro Bowls. He's been a good player for you, and he's already on a multi-year extension, so it's easy to take his salary and spread that out. Easy to do that one. Outside of that, it really doesn't matter too much who, but they need to probably pick a couple other guys. I put maybe Conklin and Posick on the offensive line. But yeah, outside of those 2 guys, just pick 1 or 2 other guys and go from there. Now, they've got a lot of roster decisions on veterans. Again, trying to gloss over a few of these details. They have all these option bonuses and certain times that they'll have to decide on these guys. But all these guys have been veteran contributors for them. Batonio and Teller have been really good guards for them in the past, but they're not coming off their best season. They're on the wrong side of 30. Okonkwo and Tomlinson have been guys on their defensive line. Tomlinson's been a starter and played better. He's also got more savings, but you'd really like to keep him if you can. Hicks has played well, but they've got some other good linebackers, so he's semi-expendable. And then Thornhill, is not that old, but he's got $4.5 million. They could wait on him until August. I'm not going to try to make too many set-in-stone predictions on this because they'll decide most of this within the next couple months before free agency happens, but in my estimation, it's quite likely that they lose both of their starting guards. I think Batonio could retire, and I think it's a good chance that Wyatt Teller is a post-June 1st cut. So I'm going to proceed into the offseason with that in mind, that I'm probably going to need to replenish this interior offensive line, which is something, there's usually guys that you can do that with. I'm going to try to hold on to most of the guys on this defense, and they've got a lot of day 3 picks to maybe find some replacements, but I would hope to keep at least Tomlinson, and outside of that, kind of as much as I can beyond that. Again, the cap situation is a headache. Just to give you an idea of how this looks, these are the details in Myles Garrett's contract. I'm not going to read all these off, but it's a bunch of option bonuses, and there's like 3 void years at the end of the contract. It's just a headache, and there's a reason why Andrew Berry is well compensated for what he does. It's a tough job, even before you start thinking about what the owner may be trying to put his thumb on the scale to make certain things happen. So that's the nitty-gritty of the contract situation. So now let's get into the roster needs. Watson seems done at quarterback, so starting quarterback is certainly going to be a major need for you right away. And there's not, you don't have the opportunity to, go get a bridge quarterback. It's just not an option with your financial situation. So we'll get into what that means. Running back, you've got Ford coming back. He's only had like 100 or 200 carries the last couple years. Nick Chubb is a free agent. I just, it stinks, but I can't really see them re-signing him. Given the injury history, given the age, I just don't see them rolling the dice on him coming back and hoping that he can return to form. And they've also got Deontay Foreman as a free agent, so they're going to need someone else to add to this group. At receiver, they've got Jerry Jeudy, played well, got an extension. Cedric Tillman and David Bell. Tillman was more productive, but both those guys are big body guys who kind of have trouble separating. So, outside of Jeudy, probably Njoku's like basically your number 2 receiver, but man, I think they need someone else to play on the outside, someone who can actually separate to help this group out. Really 1 to 2 guys to play on the outside. So at tight end, they have Njoku. Jordan Akins is a free agent. He played pretty well for him. He's 32, so I don't know whether they'll want to re-sign him. I think with what they want to do on offense, I think they want to be more of a 12 personnel team. Heck, they might sign a fullback actually and play some 21 as well, but I think they'll want a second tight end, someone who is more of a blocker, who can play significant snaps. And it's probably more important that they add another tight end here or re-sign Akins compared to like adding that second receiver, just because I think they would prefer to spend more time in 12 personnel. Like that's one running back, 2 tight ends, than 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end with 3 receivers. I think they're not as much of a 3 receiver team as they'll want to be a balanced, wide zone type of offense probably. All right, so on the offensive line, got some issues here. Jedrick Wills is a free agent, obviously former first-round pick. There was some issue with, maybe he was he hurt? Was he injured? Was he kind of not wanting to play, just when he was hurt? He's a free agent. They've gone their separate ways. DeJuan Jones is a really big dude who I had some hope for that he might be their left tackle, but unfortunately he broke his leg. He's like 374 pounds. I would be very concerned about what he's going to look like when he comes to camp, having to be off his feet for probably months, I guess. So I don't know that they can count on him to be a starter. And like we talked about, they may lose 1 or both of their veteran guards. So, you've got Jack Conklin at right tackle. You've got Ethan Posick, always a tough one for me, at center. But you may very well need 3 starters, 2 or 3, either way. They pretty much will have to stand pat on defense. Devin Bush Jr. played well for him. He's a free agent. You would kind of like to bring him back. You don't have a lot of money. If you re-sign him, you might let go of Jordan Hicks and get a little bit younger that way. That'd be pretty reasonable, but for the most part, they're probably going to have to stand pat on defense for the time being. Let's talk about some free agent fits. At wide receiver, Darius Slayton from the Giants or Josh Palmer from the Cardinals are a couple guys. It could be like a number 2 or number 3. Play outside, let Judy spend more time in the slot. Slayton, I especially like because he gives you a chance to stretch the defense and get vertical while Njoku and Judy can work more of the underneath stuff. At offensive tackle, it's a tough one because I really don't know where the market's going to be on some of these guys, and I don't know that they can spend big money. Like Alaric Jackson has graded out very well, especially as a pass protector and as a zone blocker, so I think he'd be a good scheme fit at left tackle. Usually good left tackles get paid a lot of money, but he's like 285 pounds, so I don't think he's going to be for everyone. Some people are going to look at him and say he's not strong enough or not big enough. But man, he really plays well on that left side, and for a zone blocking team like this, if they can fit him in the budget, he'd be a good pick. Dan Moore Jr., I feel like, is from the Steelers. I feel like he's not well beloved by the Steelers fan base or highly regarded by a lot of fans, but he would raise the floor for you as a pass protection focused left tackle. And I think if you're going to have a rookie quarterback potentially, you probably don't want to also have a rookie left tackle for him. So I think Dan Moore probably would help him to break him in. And I also think both these guys could play guard in the zone blocking scheme. So some versatility there. At offensive guard, Will Fries and Lucas Patrick are a couple guys. Fries would be a high-ticket item from the Colts. He's coming off an injury. Lucas Patrick has played guard and center for the Packers, Bears, and most recently the Saints. Actually graded out pretty well. Played most of the snaps for the Saints this past year. His valuation is only like $4 million, so I think the price would be right. I think he'd be a good fit in what they want to do, again, schematically. At running back, I can't really see them doing much with free agents. Probably, maybe re-signing Deontay Foreman. I feel like he's been the definition of passable for several teams. One guy that I found kind of interesting was Javonte Williams from the Broncos. He's a couple years free of his knee injury. Wonder if he's a bounce-back candidate. Wonder if his market might not be kind of tepid where he'd be affordable. Apart from that, most of the other free agent running backs are either going to be too expensive or coming off an injury. So it was just hard to find two guys that anyone would be excited about signing. So I think Javonte Williams could be kind of a sleeper there. So going into the draft then, you have 13 picks, which is kind of nice. You've got a first rounder, number 2 overall, second rounder, which is the first pick of the second round. You got 2 third rounders, the 3rd and 30th pick in that round, and then you've got 9 day 3 picks. Not a lot of people would probably be excited enough about day 3 picks to use capital letters, but I'm one of those people. I really enjoy, what those players look like down the board and looking at potential scheme fits. So I don't know. I may have to get into some 7-round mock drafts as we get closer to the draft, at least for some of these teams. Or at least, maybe talk about some of my favorite draft picks down the board. But for now, let's talk about the Browns draft strategy. First round, I think you got to go quarterback, man. If you watched my video yesterday, I argued that the Titans should strongly consider at least not taking a quarterback with the first overall pick because you've got the cap space to get a bridge quarterback, someone who could start for you, play better for you right away, and just take a better player overall for your roster. For the Browns, look, as much as Travis Hunter might help you or any number of guys, financially, I just think you really are incentivized here to roll the dice on a quarterback. Yeah, I'm higher on Cam Ward than Shadur Sanders, but if Ward goes first, I think you got to take Sanders. And at this point, just the risk reward for you with your financial situation, you've kind of painted yourself into a corner with your misstep in the Watson deal. You got to go for it. Second round, again, like I talked about yesterday, many offensive linemen will go at the end of the first round through the middle of the second round, I believe. So I would go with that here on the mock draft simulator. Booker from Alabama was available as a plug-and-play guard. I also really like Josh Connerly Jr. I feel like he would be a higher value player if he's available as a pass protection left guard left tackle who would fit well into this scheme. And then in the third round, it gets really interesting. Marcus Mbeau from Purdue was a guy I didn't feel I could pass on, especially if I lost one or both of my guards. If I lost both my guards, especially, I just feel like he would fit very well into his own blocking scheme. Probably a guard, but yeah, maybe a tackle if you get to a point where you feel like you might need someone to play tackle. That's even better for him. But Marcus Mbeau, really athletic guy, moves well, and would like him in the early third round. Deion Walker at defensive tackle. If you can justify taking a guy like this, Dalvin Tomlinson does have 2 years left on his deal, but this is a guy who's 348 pounds and surprisingly quick and nimble. Tall guy, 6'6", can definitely get to playing a little bit tall like a Calais Campbell sometimes. But, pairing him then with Michael Hall Jr., who's 280 pounds, then you'd have a really big defensive tackle and a smaller defensive tackle. And I think Jim Schwartz would really like him on, as a long-term piece on the defensive line. If you can justify it here, I think the need for offensive line went out for me. And then also at the start of the third round, this is the point where you can start to think about a running back like Caleb Johnson from Iowa, both of the Ohio State guys, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. This is the range where you start looking at maybe a starting running back, in my opinion, for this team. I would take Mbeau from that group. Then with the later third round pick, you've got three interesting options that were on the mock draft sim for me were Jaden Higgins, 6'4" receiver from Iowa State. Probably not going to run that fast, but 6'4", and I think he can separate better than the guys that you have right now. The counter argument would be, yeah, maybe he is kind of similar to, a slow, big guy. Maybe he's too similar to the receivers you have, but I would probably go with him here over a couple of quote-unquote lower value positions. I love Gunnar Helm as a prospect out of Texas. Prototypical size, can go up and snatch the ball outside of his frame, and has some juice after the catch as well, I think. And then Cam Scadaboo at running back. I can't say I'm as high on him as some people probably are. He may run like 4.6, and he may still be a great pro. So I think he's a confounding evaluation at this time, just because he's not going to have the elite measurables. But there's no doubt he's been able to produce, at the highest levels of college football regardless. And he would be not only a workhorse running back, but his hands are underrated as well. So I wouldn't fault you for taking a guy like that at the end of the third round either. Again, I'd love to go 7 rounds with you guys, but let's leave it there for now. In summary, I think the Browns need to clean up the cap, restructure Watson, Ward, couple others, make some tough choices on aging vets, be judicious in free agency, maybe re-sign Akins at tight end and Foreman at running back, add Slayton at receiver and maybe Dan Moore Jr. at offensive tackle, draft offense early and often, focusing on that side of the ball, and use your day 3 picks for either upside at high value positions, valuable role players, or trading up, or for future picks. So that's something I didn't really even talk about. They can package some of those, 9 day 3 picks, package some of those to trade up and target some guys that you want earlier in the draft, or trade them out for maybe some 2026 picks. Use those as kind of bargaining chips to get the pieces that you need to rebuild this roster going forward. So, that's pretty much it right now. In conclusion, the Browns are heading into, I think, one of the most crucial off seasons in recent memory. If they make smart moves in free agency and have a strong draft, they can start rebuilding toward contention. But with so many needs, every decision will count. So will they make the right moves, or will this rebuild start before it gets going? Now it's your turn. What do you think the Browns should do? Who's the perfect draft pick or free agent to turn this team around? I'd like for you to please drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit that subscribe button and join me tomorrow as we break down our next team. Now, that's probably going to be the New York Giants because they're picking third in the draft. But I have some friends who have been asking me about the New Orleans Saints. I've done a lot of homework on the Saints. They've got probably the only team with a more head-scratching cap situation than the Browns. So when the Saints hire a head coach, I'm going to move them to the front of the line within the next 1 to 2 days. But stay tuned for that. And thanks for watching until the end. Until next time, I'm Ben Jackson, and thank you for tuning in to 32 Teams in 32 Days, and I'll see you in the next one.